Archaeology and Ethnology at the University of São Paulo. And your research is on the characterization of morphology of formal lithic artifacts, such as bifacial points and unifacial tools, from Southeastern Brazil using geometric morphometrics methods. So when you're ready, you can start.
Okay, I'll start now. So I'm a PhD candidate at the University of São Paulo, and I'm here today to present some preliminary results of my PhD research. So the title of this presentation is Describing Shapes of Formal Lithic Artifacts from São Paulo State, Southeastern Brazil, a Geometric Morphometrics Approach. So works on geometric morphometrics applied to Brazilian material culture are fairly recent, started about 13 years ago. Dr. Mercedes Okumura and Dr. Astolfo Araujo, who are co-authors of this presentation, have been the only researchers applying morphometrics to Brazilian archaeology so far. Their research regards the application of 2D geometric morphometrics to lithic bifacial points from South and Southeastern Brazil. So the image on the left shows a map of Brazil. The central and northeastern portion of the country, painted in yellow, shows the area covered by an archaeological culture identified as Itaparica tradition, which is composed by lithic unifacial tools known as limaças or lesmas, as we say in Portuguese. The other area in blue, in the south, represents the coverage of another archaeological culture named Umbu tradition, which was defined in the 1960s and 70s by the presence of bifacial projectile points. The map on the right is a zoom in of the southern and southeastern regions of Brazil, circled in red, showing some of the archaeological sites presenting bifacial points assigned as Umbu tradition, dated from the late Pleistocene to the initial historical period. The results of the geometric morphometric studies conducted by Dr. Okumura and Dr. Araujo show that points produced by groups from Southeastern Brazil present a very distinct morphology comparing to points produced by Southern groups. According to the authors, this clear variation in point morphologies may indicate a distinct regional identity shared by hunter-gatherer groups from Southeastern part only in regards to projectile point production. The main conclusion is that Umbu tradition presents a more restricted range, both in chronological and spatial terms, than the one proposed so far. Now, in my PhD, I am continuing these previous works developed for São Paulo State, which is the state located in the southeastern portion of the country. The map on the right is a zoom in of the state, where you can see the dots indicating the location of archaeological sites and towns of interest containing bifacial points and unifacial lithic tools. The major aim of this research is to characterize the morphological variability of two classes of formal lithic artifacts, bifacial points and unifacial tools of hunter-gatherer groups from São Paulo State, using two-dimension geometric morphometrics and traditional morphometrics. The idea is to better understand the processes of occupation of these human groups in Brazilian Southeast during the Holocene, as well as to provide new insights and scientific evidence for questions related to the definition of archaeological cultures and frontiers in South American prehistory. In this study, we explore the application of 2D geometric morphometrics in the analysis of the morphology of bifacial points and unifacial tools to track changes in shape using landmarks and semi-landmarks. Two areas of São Paulo State were compared: the center of the state and the region of São Simão in the northeast. For bifacial points, we have a total of 111 specimens, being 75 points from the center and 36 points from São Simão. For unifacial tools, we analyzed a sample of 71 specimens from the center and 100 specimens from São Simão, totalizing 171 specimens. So in terms of results, what we have done so far is an initial exploratory statistical description of the potential differences between the two regions. This box plot presents the centroid sizes of bifacial points for both regions. So it shows that points from São Simão tend to be bigger than the points from the center. On the other hand, points from the central region tend to present a greater range of variation in terms of size, including some outliers. On the right, we see a PCA of shape coordinates where specimens are distributed according to their shape. The extreme shapes of each axis are shown. The PCA shows that points from both Central and São Simão regions present a great shape diversity and are distributed in most of the shape space. That means that there is an important overlap between points of the two regions in terms of shape. Points from São Simão have a tendency of less resharpening and therefore presenting a longer body and shorter stem. They also tend to have wider stem and body than points from the center. On the other hand, points from the center include specimens presenting several degrees of resharpening, as well as specimens showing a tendency to be narrower than the points from São Simão. It is also relevant to observe that there are specimens from both regions very close to the point of intersection between the two axes, thus similar to the consensus shape, which means no resharpening and no significant differences in general width. Now, for unifacial tools, the box plot presents the centroid sizes of unifacial artifacts for both regions. Unifacial artifacts from São Simão, in purple, tend to be bigger than the ones from the center, and also tend to present a greater range of variation in terms of size, including some outliers. But a considerable range of size variation, including outliers, can also be observed in the case of specimens from the center. According to the PCA, unifacial artifacts from both regions present a great shape diversity and are distributed in most of the shape space. So there is considerable shape overlap between specimens from the center and from São Simão. Considering the horizontal axis, the distribution of specimens from São Simão indicates variation towards rounder artifacts, as well as to artifacts with oblique straight bases. On the right part of the graph, we can observe a concentration of specimens from both regions, so that there is an equal tendency for artifacts to be more elongated. The graph also indicates a reasonable balance between the variation of artifacts with a round base and of artifacts with a more oblique straight base in both regions. So, in terms of conclusions, although there is a strong overlap, the bifacial points from the center cover a wider variety of forms and may or may not be resharpened. Second, points from São Simão tend to represent a stricter behavior regarding forms and resharpening. Third, unifacial tools have a much greater overlap than the points. So there is the possibility of the points to carry a stylistic charge stronger than the unifacial tools. The latter would be artifacts of more intense use, probably subject to stronger mechanical stresses than the points. The functional part of the point involves only the apex to penetrate and the symmetry for a predictable trajectory. Greater or lesser elongation, absence or presence of stem are less important and may have this stylistic charge. While there is clearly a generally elliptical outline shape for the unifacial tools, because they could certainly have other shapes, there doesn't seem to be any cultural pressure to maintain specific shapes. So GMM is helping to understand this lithic diversity in São Paulo, as research is showing that projectile points and unifacial artifacts produced by groups from Southeastern Brazil present a distinct morphology comparing to the same classes of artifacts produced by Southern and Northern human groups. Thank you very much.